What's up YouTube, Dar here from Zephyr War Games, bringing you an update to Dark Worlds. Yes, this is a no budget restriction, this is going all out on this particular build, and it does do some incredibly powerful things. It has a very good balance of going first and second, it has that ability to loop your opponent's hand, and it does have that ability to break your opponent's board. So, with all of that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell, and subscribe. If you would like to see a very basic combo tutorial video for this particular type of deck, then please let me know in the comments down below and smash that like button. Getting it above 50 likes in the first 24 hours will unlock that for you. So, with all of that out of the way, let's dive head first into this Dark World profile. So, we're starting off with two Grepher Dragons. Now, I've kind of found myself a lot happier with two. Now it's a little bit different in the Kashtira matchup because you've got to make sure that these all don't get banished face down. If that happens, it does suck. And that's probably one of the very few matchups where you're like, damn, I really wish I had a third. Then, of course, we do play triple Genta. Now, this is your starter. This is where it gets a little bit tricky, again, under the Kashtira matchup. Because with the Kashtira matchup, this guy needs to discard itself as cost to the graveyard. If your opponent is rocking that Rise Heart, it does become a little bit difficult because this can't be sent in order to get you out the gates. And that's when you need to break that Rise Heart or negate that Rise Heart before you can resolve. Then, of course, we do have triple Snow. This is the cog that keeps it all turning. The fact that it sets out any Dark World cards is mental. I really wish the new Corridor spell was called Dark World Corridor, because then she could search it. But it still is an incredibly good card, and I can't wait till we get that as well. Then, of course, we do have free Rainbow Overking, not Overlord, big sad, of the Dark World. It does mean that when we get that new fusion monster, we will need to play the original Rainbow. But I feel there might be places where you can kind of cut a little bit, or you might start adapting it and go for something like a tier element list or a tier element matchup, so you can play King of the Swamp and get more benefits from a card like that. Regardless, playing free of this is very, very important. It's a very powerful card. The fact it's a 3k boss monster, the only disappointing thing is the fact that it can't return the Grepher from the board to the hand, but Grepher can return it. So it's kind of like you're downgrading your Rainbow attack stat-wise to go for a Grepher, which I understand because he's the main boss monster, but you also kind of want the original Rainbow to have an effect like that. Would have been really, really cool. And then for the one-offs, I play the 1 gold, the 1 silver, and the 1 cerulei. Now, there has been a couple of times where I've experimented more so putting silver to 2 or putting cerulei to 2. I've kind of felt that ones of each has been absolutely fine for me. The reason I've got the gold in here is gold is the same option off the cerulei as silver is, but for going second, and it lets me pop 2 cards, so it gives me more options to kind of break a board apart rather than rip a hand apart, because my opponent might only have 1 card in hand, 2 cards in hand, and they're probably going to, if they've held onto those cards, they're probably going to use them at some point or not, and silver needs to send exactly 2 back, whereas gold is up to 2. Very, very important. Cerulei is obviously the pain in the backside. If Konami were to want to slap this deck in the future, that is probably the one you go for the pure fact that it does instigate most of the degenerate plays. But that being said, it is the main card of a deck like this because it does then allow you to trigger the secondary effects of this deck. So, give and take. Then my spicy touch on this one. I've played this like in most of my builds. Like the only build that I wouldn't play this in is if I'm playing Lava Golem, but I'm actually playing Luna and I'm also playing the Gandala. Now the Gandala can be, if you wanted to play a lore, could be Raiden, but because I play trading in this version where I'm playing the dangers and I want to trigger them as consistently as possible, I went with Gandala as it is. Yes, you could go for Gameciel, that's entirely up to you. I just went with Gandala because it came in the structure decks, it was just a lot cheaper. Not the Dark World structure decks, but it came in the Trap Trick structure deck, it was a lot cheaper, a lot easier. I do have Gameciels, so it's entirely up to you. Basically, a level 8 Kaiju you want in your main deck is one of the best ways of breaking a board, and that's where Luna comes in, because not only can Luna help you facilitate a more extended hand loop, it can also form as a go first form of interruption to your opponent, and it can also bounce back your own Kaiju, so you can do it again. So for those of you that don't know what Fairy Tail Luna does, it has a very nice effect that on summon it gets to add a spellcaster type monster specifically with 1850 attacks. So it just searches out another copy of itself, which is great because it means you've got to follow up for the next turn. It also has a very, very cool quick effect that during either player's turn you get to target a face-up monster your opponent controls. Your opponent can send 1 card from their monsters with that monster's name from the deck or extra deck to the graveyard to negate this effect. Otherwise, you return both cards to the hand. So it decreases your hand volume. If your opponent has a cerulei on the board, for example, unless they are playing the mirror match, you bounce that cerulei back to your hand. Like I said with the kaiju, you can kaiju one of your opponent's, let's say, Omni-Negate monsters, and they might have a towers as well. So let's look at Chaos Angel, which is definitely something I'd be looking about putting into this deck, as long as you can adapt to level 8s, because you'll have like a level 4 Luna, and then like a level 4 Beige as well. Crazy good. But the idea would be that Luna, you can then kaiju your opponent's Omni-Negate, something that might stop you. Normal summon the Luna, Luna searches out another copy of herself, use her effect to target the kaiju. Now unless they're playing the exact same kaiju as you, which is rare, but sometimes may happen, you return that kaiju back to the hand, you return the Luna back to the hand, and then your opponent has a towers, and you just go, cool, kaiju the towers. You've cleared everything off that you need to, and all that is taking you is 2 cards, and you've replenished your hand. So if you do then have dangers, you've got 2 expendable cards in your hand in order to do that, and resolve that, and push even further forward. Carrying on, moving into the dangers, funnily enough, we do play double Mothman, double Nessie, and then a couple of singles in the form of Bigfoot, Thunderbird, Jackalope, and Sukanoko. Now this is all pretty straightforward in my opinion for the danger lineup. Sometimes you might change it and play 2 Bigfoot, you might play 2 Thunderbird. I feel that this ratio works out perfectly fine. The Mothman's really, really important, and the dangers in general are really important for the deck if they resolve. Now if you get sniped, it sucks beyond belief, but it does happen. Unfortunately, that is the RNG factor of the deck. If you do not like the RNG factor of the deck, as you can see here, it's a very small 8-card engine that can be taken out for something a little bit more consistent, but the card you're taking them out for and giving them will give your opponent a bit of advantage. So when you look at stuff like 3 copies of Darkworld Dealing, if you wanted to be extra spicy and go for, I think it's the Laughing Coffin, I've got it over here. But the coffin that lets you discard 3 monsters, up to 3 monsters, is a card that I always thought was a really funny tech if you're not a fan of dangers as well. And then another card you do also have an option for is being able to play the Salamander Catalyzer. That's just another way that is a controllable dark world, or a controllable danger in a sense, but again that really comes down to your personal play style. If you wanted to go down the synchro route, you do have the access to Fabled Raven. You also have access to puppetry if you wanted to. You've got Allure of Darkness, you've got Beige, even Brow. It really depends on what you want to go for and how you want to play it. There you go, the Cheerful Coffin. So I thought this was a really kind of cool option if you were completely opposed to danger monsters, and the fact that it came out in, I believe, MRD, Metal Raiders, then it's even better now that you've got the Legendary Collections, because you can start getting those in reprint. And the last monster we play is, of course, the one Zephyros the Elite. This is like an honorary danger. The fact you can get this to the graveyard and then bounce back a danger and then use the danger again is very, very important, and again, very powerful. The fact it's at level 4 helps you facilitate your rank 4 engines, and will also help facilitate Chaos Angel in the future post-Syac. Moving on to the spells, I tried to keep the spells to a minimum, so we've got about, I believe it is, last time I checked, I believe it is like 32 monsters, and then 12 spells, and the 12 spells is just because I added in 2 right at the last minute. So, 2 Gate of the Dark World, I personally feel 2 is more than enough. I see a lot of builds playing 3, okay, fair enough, it comes down to personal preference again, like I've said many a time, but 2 works well for me because, yes, there's the odd chances that you'll be able to bounce the Genta back. You're definitely going to bounce it back twice, but you can't get it back to the board for a 3rd time, so you're only playing a 3rd gate to open it up. And that's not really something that I would personally want to do. Like, I want to keep the gates buried. I don't want to see them in my hand at all. I want to be able to activate the Genta to search it. Now, obviously, a little bit different in a Kashtira match because you're like, okay, well, if Genta can't search it, I need to use it. But then you still need a graveyard to resolve it. So 2, I am more than happy with. The 1 Archives and then the 1 Accession. I keep bouncing back between 1 and 2 Accession. I feel that 1 is working okay for me at the moment. There may be the odd time I'm like, damn, I really wish I had a 2nd. But the fact that as long as you play this correctly, you keep looping it for the resource is really, really important. The fact that it has a discard effect to trigger a Dark World is mental. I love this card for this, and I can't wait until we get the new Rainbow Colorless, because then this can have an additional fusion monster to use and abuse. Then for the draw cards, I do play 2 trade-in. So as you saw, we've played 2 Grepher, 3 Rainbow. Not that you will trigger the effects of Rainbow and Grepher off of the back of trading, but they are targets that you might want to the graveyard to bounce back some of your resource. Your main targets are going to be your Dark Worlds, and you also have the Kaijus as well. So in total, you have about 10 targets for your trading options. Obviously, some are a little bit more effective than others, and it really comes down to your playstyle and your personal preference as to whether or not you decide to bump up Bigfoot or Thunderbird to 2. Thunderbird, the only reason I'd put it to 2 is if you were to max out on Book of Eclipse or even possibly play Book of Moon. But I still feel that this is an incredibly good card for going second, heck, even going first. It's one of the ones where if you've used all of your negates on the board or your opponent negates your board, you wait for them to commit to the board and then you Book of Eclipse them. Yes, they'll get like 1 or maybe 2 draws in the end phase, but you protect your entire board. All of your board is 99% of the time going to be boss monsters, so when you flip them up the next turn, you're going to be able to pretty much punch over whatever else is left on the board. I've then decided to put in 2 Triple Tactic Thrust and a single Triple Tactics. And the reason I went with Thrust and the 1 Talents is for the pure fact that you're giving your opponent Ceruli. So for those of you that don't know how this works, when you give your opponent Ceruli, Ceruli triggers as if it is your opponent activating that effect. So if you do have access to a Talents or a Thrust, you can then use Thrust and then set or add the card directly to your hand. This can add me a trade-in if I've got a Danger or a Dark World that I want to be utilising. More times than not, you'll go for a Talents, because Talents can actually help you complete a 5-card hand rip in turn 1 as well, which is just disgusting. So being able to play the balance of this, not only can Talents Thrust be useful in your side deck when you're looking for stuff like Evening Mats, when you're looking for Lightning Storms, Dark Holes, you name it, it can be utilised in the main deck going first or second, as long as you give your opponent a Ceruli. Now obviously if you don't give them a Ceruli, you might want to hold back off the Thrust, because then you're only going to be able to set the card and the card's just going to sit there useless for a turn. Another card that it can search is obviously Card Destruction, which in a deck like this is very insane. For the pure fact that you activate Card Destruction, it's discarding as effect, not as cost, which is really important, because that will let you refresh your hand and then trigger all of your Dark World effects. Keeping in mind that most of your Dark World effects are not once per turns, so you're going to be able to trigger all of those. It can trigger your Dangers going second as well. So it's just another one of them cards that can just go, okay, cool, activate, blow up. Now, keep in mind, it just discards the cards. So even under a Macro Cosmo-esque monster in the form of Riotheart, being able to activate this will trigger your Dangers, because your Dangers just need to be discarded. It doesn't matter if they go to the grave or not, whereas your Dark Worlds need to specifically go to the graveyard, which is why they won't. And that is it for the main deck. Moving on to the extra deck. Pretty standard on this. It's very rare that this changes depending on, again, your playstyle. But I go with 2 Grepher Dragon of the Overlord. I'd probably still play 2 when we get colourless. You just add 1 colourless to the middle of this one here. For the links, you've got the 1 Saruja, the 1 Appaloosa. So these is your, obviously, defensive. And then your Saruja can actually be a very easy tag out into Zelantis. Now, I've seen a lot of people cut this and the Muckraker play. Completely understandable if you want to. I just really, really like it. The fact that very few people outside of the competitive scene, I like to think that if they've played against Dark Worlds enough, they'll know about it. Know about the combo where you go, you make your Zelantis first, then you make your Muckraker, and then you use the Muckraker effect, which will allow you to discard a card to bring back a Fiend monster, locking you into Fiends. You activate the Zelantis effect to nuke or banish the entire board, and then all you can do is bring back Fiend monsters. As it is you, the player that is controlling Zelantis, brings back those monsters, not your opponent. You cannot bring back monsters back to your opponent's field if they are not Fiends. So it's a very, very cool board wipe. Carrying on with the Link monsters, of course, we do play the 1 Nightmare Unicorn, the 1 Muckraker, the 1 Akashic Magician, very important in the combo for Ceruli, because being able to make this and putting Ceruli in front of an extra monster zone, returning it back to the hand, and as long as you have another ability to discard, you're then going to be able to discard that Ceruli and then possibly rip your opponent for another 2 cards. We've then, of course, got the 1 Cross Sheep and the 1 IP Masquerina with a beautiful Underworld Goddess of the Closed Worlds in the stack. Now, the reason that this card is so good is the fact that it is a Fiend monster, so that when you are locked with the Muckraker play, you can still link into it. Keeping in mind that if you went with IP and then Muckraker without using Zelantis, IP can then of course use your opponent's stuff to make the Underworld Goddess, which is very, very good when you're trying to deal with Kashtira Birth, because trust me, that's annoying. But then it also gives that ability to take away one of your opponent's monsters, whether it be a tower or not. It will give you a lot of flexibility. And then for the last cards, we are playing a couple of rank cards. We've got 2 rank 8s, 1 in Giant Coach. This is obviously ideal, goes first, draw 3 monsters, burn your opponent for 24. You've got a time con and everything else, but you can't conduct the battle phase the turn you activate this effect. And then of course you've got Hope Harbinger as a redirect attack, and of course Spell Negator. And then the final rank 4 is you've got Baguska for those really slow down games. And then of course you've got the Gerez, which not only is a fiend, both of them are as well, but it gives you that ability to draw and discard via effects, meaning it will trigger your Dark Worlds. So any cards like that, you're going to want to be using and abusing because they just let you get away with near enough absolute murder when you are playing a deck like this. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is it for the profile. I hope it's given you a couple of ideas on your own build. If you do have any questions for this whatsoever, by all means, please put them in the comments down below. I will be more than happy to answer them for you. But for now, as absolutely always, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell, and subscribe so you do not miss out on anything else. As absolutely always, guys, stay safe, and of course, happy dueling.